this is an attempt to develop certain concept videos, concepts related to the course in signal processing. Could be analog signal processing or digital signal processing. And we start off with a simple video on the sampling theorem. So here in today's this short module, we shall try to understand the sampling theorem, and we should also try to come out with the proof of the sampling theorem, as this forms a basis in all signal processing applications. So to state the sampling theorem, it states that any continuous time signal say x of t, band limited to say w hertz, can be exactly recovered from its samples, provided the sampling rate fs is greater than twice w. Now this is the statement. So that is, if I have a continuous time signal and if I try to sample it, and I can get back my original signal exactly from the sample signal. So now to see it in a simpler method. So suppose I have a signal, say x of t, and if I have a sample signal, say xs of t. So I have I decide on some sampling interval, and then I have the samples of my original signal. And I try to maintain this sampling interval constant, say Ts. And what is Ts? It is nothing but the sampling frequency, reciprocal of the sampling frequency 1 by fs. And all that the statement says is, if I have to send, imagine a situation that we want to send x of t to some destination. Now, instead of sending x of t, I am going to send the samples xs of t. And when I send the samples xs of t, if I follow the sampling theorem, that is, if I ensure that my sampling interval Ts satisfies this condition, that it should be greater than twice the bandwidth, that is the band that the analog signal is limited to, there is absolutely no loss of information. So this is really interesting, because instead of sending the continuous time signal for all time, we are just going to send samples of the signal. And even from the samples of the signal, we can get back the original information without any loss of information. So this is the whole interesting concept of the sampling theorem. So now let us try to prove it. So we shall try to attempt to prove the sampling theorem, and we cannot prove the sampling theorem in the time domain. By my time domain representation, it is not possible to prove the sampling theorem. We cannot prove the theorem. So there is a need to go into the frequency domain representation. Only then we will be able to prove the theorem, because it looks really magical. Like, instead of sending the complete signal, I send the samples, and from the samples I can get back my complete original signal without any loss of information. This is almost like unbelievable. So this is what happens when we try to understand the signal in the whole concept in time domain. But suppose I move into frequency domain, then we will get convinced that this is possible. So for that, we shall there is a need to go into two simple concepts, the Fourier transform and the Fourier series. So we shall look into a very brief representation or understanding of the Fourier transform. Fourier transform, which states that wherein if I have a signal x of t, and it has a Fourier transform, say x of omega. Now, this is the Fourier. So I have a signal in the time domain. This time domain signal, I can have the equivalent transform in the frequency domain. Now, the transform says that x of omega is equal to, the Fourier transform is given by integral minus infinity to infinity x of t e to the power of minus j omega t dt. Whereas from the Fourier transform, I can get back the original signal x of t by the inverse Fourier transform, and that is given by integral minus infinity to infinity x of omega e to the power of j omega t d omega. So this is the Fourier transform and the inverse Fourier transform. So using these equations, we can switch from one domain to the other. So we can represent the signal either in the time domain or in the frequency domain. So now here, if I take, for example, if I take, say, I will, just to understand this Fourier transform, let me take an example. Say I want to compute the Fourier transform of a signal, the unit impulse function, delta t. And then I need to apply the Fourier transform representation. So I have the Fourier transform of delta t, and that is given by integral minus infinity to infinity x of t e to the power of minus j omega t dt, which is, in this case, it is minus infinity to infinity delta t e to the power of minus j omega t dt, which now becomes, since delta t is a function that exists only for t equal to 0, this whole integral reduces to e power minus j omega t at t equal to 0, which is 1. So now we have a relation, we have the result that the unit impulse function has a Fourier transform 1. And if I try to plot this result in the time domain, I have the function as a function of time. I have delta t. This is my signal x of t, and a unit impulse of magnitude 1. And in the frequency domain, as a function of omega, this is a constant x of omega of magnitude 1. So what is implied by this result is that if I have an unit impulse function, a signal which is 0 throughout suddenly rises to a magnitude of 1 and immediately falls down to a magnitude of 0. So this sudden rise and fall in amplitude of the signal actually implies the signal is having all frequencies of equal strength. So it is actually a signal of infinite bandwidth. So the signal, the time domain signal duration is almost 0, and in frequency domain its duration is almost infinite. It is unlimited. Similar, let's take one more example. Let's take another example just to understand little concepts of Fourier transform. So let us say I want to get the inverse Fourier transform of say 2 pi delta omega. So now if this is what is given in the frequency domain, we are given as a delta function and we want to get the inverse Fourier transform. And so for this we use the inverse Fourier transform expression, which is given by 1 by 2 pi integral minus infinity to infinity x of omega e to the power of j omega t d omega. And in this example, we are given that x of omega is 2 pi delta omega. So 2 pi delta omega, so e to the power of j omega t d omega. So the 2 pi gets cancelled, and finally once again we have the result as e to the power of j omega t, because this whole integral, this function delta function exists only at omega equal to 0, and hence this reduces to omega equal to 0, and which is nothing but this again becomes a 1. So what is the result now? The result that we got is 2 pi delta omega has an inverse Fourier transform of 1. So as a convention, we normally try to represent the time domain function in the left hand side and the frequency domain function in the right hand side. So if I were to plot the result in time domain, my signal x of t is a function of time. And how is it? It's a constant. It's 1. It's a signal of strength 1. In the frequency domain, what happens? Let's look at it in the frequency domain. How is it? It is a unit impulse of magnitude 2 pi. Now, is this an unknown result? If I have a signal which is constant in time domain, what does it mean? An example of a signal which is constant in time domain is say a DC, our DC source. Something that is constant and doesn't change with time is nothing but a signal of zero frequency, and this is what we are getting in this result. So we have obtained the Fourier transform of a constant, and it turns out to be a signal of zero frequency. So we'll take one more. So what it means is a DC signal, a signal which doesn't change with time, which remains constant, is actually a signal of zero frequency. And this is a result we already know. Let's move on to taking one more example. Let us say we try to obtain the inverse Fourier transform. We'll take one more example for the inverse Fourier transform. Let's say we want to get the inverse Fourier transform of 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught. So if I try to obtain the inverse Fourier transform of this function, so then I have my 1 by 2 pi integral minus infinity to infinity x of omega t to the power of j omega t d omega, which is in this particular example 2 pi integral minus infinity to infinity 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught d omega. Sorry, e to the power of j omega t d omega. And once again, the 2 pi gets cancelled, and then what we have is this delta omega minus omega naught is nothing but it's 1 at omega equal to omega naught. So the whole integral now reduces to e to the power of j omega t at omega equal to omega naught, which is nothing but e to the power of j omega naught t. So what's our result now? We have the result as e to the power of j omega naught t has a Fourier transform 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught. Now extending, this is the result we are getting, and let me extend this since complex exponential becomes difficult to imagine in a real as a real example. We'll take one more example and translate it to something more meaningful. So extending the we can prove that e power minus j omega naught t will have the Fourier transform 2 pi delta omega plus omega naught. And combining these two results by using the linearity property, we know that cos omega naught t, by using the Euler's expression relation, we have this as e power j omega naught t plus e to the power of minus j omega naught t by 2. So if I now want to compute the Fourier transform, say as another example, if I say I attempt to compute the Fourier transform of cos omega naught t, by using the above results, what I get is cos omega naught t, and by the Fourier transform also follows the linearity principle, and hence we have 2 pi delta omega minus omega naught plus 2 pi delta omega plus omega naught whole divided by 2, or we have the result as cos omega naught t has a Fourier transform pi times delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. And if I try to plot this result, sorry, I'm just using a freehand sketch to plot the result. So in my time domain, I have a cosine function. In my time domain, I have a cosine function. So I have a cosine function, say e cos of omega naught t. And what is the frequency of a signal cos omega naught t? We know this is the signal of frequency omega naught. And what does my Fourier transform result give me? It gives me pi times delta omega minus omega naught plus delta omega plus omega naught. And if I try to plot the result, what am I getting? I am getting an impulse at omega naught and an impulse at minus omega naught, and of strength pi. So what does this imply? What is the physical significance of this result? The only positive frequencies have any physical significance. So negative frequencies with symmetry are present only because of our Euler representation. And if I look at the positive frequencies, I have the frequency omega naught being present. So I immediately look at the Fourier transform, and then I can tell that this represents a signal of frequency omega naught. And what is a signal of frequency omega naught is nothing but the cosine signal. Similarly, if I do a sine, I will have some phase component as well. I'll observe a very similar spectrum, but with a phase difference of phase delay of pi by 2. Now, we'll take one more property of Fourier transform that we will require for understanding the Fourier, the sampling theorem. We'll take one more example. Let us take what is the Fourier transform of a signal that is multiplied by e power j omega naught t. So what we want to know, what is going to be the Fourier transform of a signal that gets multiplied by the complex exponential. So to get this result, let's try to compute the Fourier transform of x of t e to the power of j omega naught t. This is given by integral minus infinity to infinity, and my signal is x of t e to the power of minus j omega naught t dt. This is by definition, and I replace my signal x of t by this given function. What is my given function? I normally need to put my signal x of t. X of t is e to the power of j omega naught t. This is my signal, and by definition of the Fourier transform, I have this. Okay. This now reduces to integral, x of t e to the power of minus j. This is e to the power of minus j omega minus omega naught t dt. And what is this? By observing it, when I compare it to the standard representation of the Fourier transform, I'm having minus infinity to infinity x of t e power minus j omega naught t. So comparing with the standard expression, this we can immediately recognize as e power x of omega minus omega naught. And hence we have the important result that this is the frequency translation property or frequency shift property of the Fourier transform. And it says that e power j omega naught t, x of t, when I multiply it by a complex exponential in the time domain, it results in a frequency shift. So that is why multiplication in time domain is equivalent to a shift in the frequency. Now, once again, a complex exponential as such, I cannot give a example. So let us come to a more meaningful cosine function. So for that, we will extend this above property of frequency translation. So x of t e power minus j omega naught t will now have the Fourier transform given by x of omega plus omega naught. Combining the above two results, we can now have when cos omega naught t. If I have a signal x of t multiplied by cos omega naught t, and by simply using, because cos omega naught t is e power j omega naught t plus e power minus j omega naught t by 2. So I will get now x of omega minus omega naught plus x of omega plus omega naught by 2. So for example, if I want to understand this property, let us take a signal x of t, some signal x of t which has a Fourier transform. Or okay, I think we'll take a specific example to understand this property. Let's take an example of a signal, say x of t. X of t, that is a rectangular pulse. say a rectangular pulse, so that extends from say minus 2 to plus 2, and it has a magnitude of say 5. This is my time domain signal. And let us try to get the Fourier transform of this function, this signal x of t. So by definition, I have my Fourier transform x of omega is given by integral minus infinity to infinity x of t e to the power of minus j omega t dt, which now becomes integral minus 2 to 2, because the signal exists only from 2 to 2, and the strength is 5 e to the power of minus j omega t dt. And this I can simplify it further. I can compute the integration, and then I get it as say 5. The magnitude remains e to the power of minus j omega t divided by minus j omega, and the limits of integration being from minus 2 to plus 2. So what I have is 5, and there is a minus sign, so I will take it and I will try to. So this will give me e to the power of minus. I put t takes the value of 2, so e to the power of minus 2j omega minus e to the power of plus 2j omega whole divided by minus j omega. So now what does this happen? I now, let us say I multiply and divide by 2, and I absorb the minus sign and interchange, and then this whole term can be represented as a sign. So I multiply by 2, and then I have a 5, and then I will get a sine 2 omega. And I also have the omega on the denominator. So then now what happens? Once again I multiply and divide by 2. So then I will get a 2 and a 2. So then what happens? So I have this constant as 5 2s are 10, and so 20. And this function, the function sin x by x, we know that the function sin x by x can be is known as the sinc function, sinc x, and hence I can now this whole term now becomes a sinc 2 omega. So what's the result we have? We have the function x of t. What was our function x of t? It was a signal, a rectangular pulse that exists from minus 2 to 2 and of strength 5. And this has a Fourier transform. The result that we got is 20 sinc 2 omega. Now let's try to plot the result as a function of omega. The magnitude at omega equal to 0, the sinc function has a magnitude equal to 1, so the strength is 20. And the first 0 crossing occurs as 2 omega at integral multiples of the argument equal to 5. So 2 omega equal to 5, or omega equal to 5 by 2. It's my first 0 crossing. The next 0 crossing will be at 5, and so on. At minus 5 by 2, my first 0. So then it's a sinc. Again, it's a freehand sketch. It's just to understand. So this is our rectangular pulse function. When I have a rectangular pulse function, this is what we have the Fourier transform as. Now let's apply the, let's consider the other signal. Now let's consider one more example as an application of the frequency translation property. Let us consider the signal that is going to be say the above x of t multiplied by say some cos 25t. So what I have is, I am going to have the same signal from minus 2 to plus 2, and I'm going to have a function that is a product of x of t and cos 25t. So I am going to have a lot of oscillations. It's not drawn to scale. Please excuse for that. And so that exists. It's a pulse that exists from -2 to +2, and it's a cosine signal. Now what is our if I look at my Fourier transform or the frequency translation property, what does it say? It is x of omega plus omega naught plus x of omega minus omega naught divided by 2. And in this particular example, what is x of omega? 20 sinc 2 omega. So now this RF pulse, if I call it a pulse or a pulse of a cosine signal that exists for a short duration, this signal has a Fourier transform given by it. So my result is now going to be say x of omega is equal to 20 sinc. Instead of 2, instead of omega is going to be omega plus omega naught. And what is omega naught? Say 25 plus 20 sinc 2 omega minus 25 whole divided by 2. So we have the result as 10 sinc of 2 sinc of omega plus 25 and plus sinc of omega 2, of course that's the 2 into omega minus 25. This is the result. Now what happens? Now if I try to sketch the spectrum of this cosine pulse that exists for a short duration, I need to go to, it gets translated omega plus 25 is the negative shift, and there is a positive 25 and a minus 25. My whatever original spectrum I had, the strength of 20, and it's going to have integral multiples of the zero crossings at integral multiples of 5 by 2. So this is what happens now. This is the result we get. So strength 20. So what has happened when I multiplied by a cosine signal, I have the original spectrum that is shifted to plus 25 and minus 25. And for physical significance, what is the interpretation? Only positive frequencies are of physical significance, and hence we have a spectrum that gets shifted. So when I multiply by a cosine function, we have a frequency translation, and our modulation is based on this property of the Fourier transform. Now to summarize what we have seen, what we will tell is any continuous time signal x of t, we can get the Fourier transform. Of course, the signal needs to satisfy certain conditions known as the Dirichlet's conditions, and then we can get the Fourier transform. And if I know the time domain representation, I can get the corresponding frequency domain representation, or the other way. If I have the Fourier transform of the signal, I can get back the time domain representation. So there is a unique relation. This is the transform is unique. So no two signals can have the same Fourier transform or the other way. So a signal is completely specified either by its time domain representation x of t or the frequency domain representation x of omega. So this is one concept of the Fourier transform that we will require for understanding the sampling theory. We will now require one more concept of to understand the Fourier transform. To understand the sampling theorem, and that is the Fourier series. The Fourier series. And what does Fourier series say? Fourier series is not a transform in the first step. We normally use Fourier series to have a time domain representation. Fourier series is the time domain representation. time domain representation, and it's an exact representation for any periodic signal. For any periodic signal x of t, we can have the Fourier series representation, and the representation is given by say x of t is equal to sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n e to the power of j n omega naught t, and where x of n is given by 1 by t naught integral over 1 continuous period t naught x of t e to the power of minus j n omega naught t dt. Now what is this? See, this is this equation. The equation 1 is known as the Fourier series representation of the signal. Unlike the Fourier transform, we are not moving from time domain to the frequency domain. It's a time domain representation. So, and what is the feature of x of t? It's a periodic signal. And any periodic signal, once again, which satisfies the Dirichlet's conditions, we can have the Fourier series representation. And in terms of constant x of n, where x of n is given by this integral, wherein we integrate over 1 continuous interval, interval of the time period t naught. So, and my omega naught is nothing but 2 pi by t naught. This is the, and x of n is also known as the Fourier series coefficients. Now we will take one particular example of the Fourier series representation of a signal that we require for understanding the Fourier, the sampling theorem. So consider a signal x of t, periodic signal x of t, which is an impulse train. So it has, let us say this is Ts, say 2 Ts, 3 Ts, periodic signal, periodic with period say Ts. And since this signal is periodic, we can always, and let us consider this interval, say minus Ts by 2 to plus Ts by 2. So now, because the signal is periodic, this is this x of t is also known as say the impulse train. Impulse train. So because it's periodic with period Ts, we can obtain the Fourier series representation. And what is the Fourier series representation? Sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n e to the power of j n omega st. And what is omega s? Omega s is 2 pi by ts. And what is x of n? The Fourier series coefficients. I need to compute the Fourier series coefficients. That is 1 by ts. Integral over 1 interval. Let me consider the interval minus ts by 2 to plus ts by 2, because I can take any continuous interval, maybe 0 to ts or ts to 2 ts, etc. Here I decide to take the interval minus ts by 2 to ts by 2, x of t e to the power of minus j n omega naught omega st dt. Then what happens? Now here it is 1 by ts, integral minus ts by 2 to ts by 2, x of t is delta t, e to the power of minus j n omega st dt. Because in this interval, if I look at my pulse train, my impulse train, in the interval minus ts by 2 to plus ts by 2, in this interval, if I see my signal is of strength 1 and it's an impulse function, and hence I put the impulse. Once again, because I'm integrating, my function is delta t, this integral reduces to the value at minus jn omega st at t equal to 0, because delta t is 1 at t equal to 0, and of course I also have this 1 by ts. and this quantity turns out to be 1, and hence my x of n is 1 by t. So once I get my Fourier series coefficient xn, I need to just go back and get the representation of my impulse train by using the Fourier series. I go back and put in my equation 1, and I get my Fourier series representation of the impulse train, and that is given by x of t equal to 1 by ts, sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity. This is 1 by ts e to the power of jn omega st. And so this is my Fourier series representation of the impulse train. This is a result. This is a very unique signal. Usually the Fourier series coefficient x of n will be a function of n. But in this particular example of the impulse train, the Fourier series is also an impulse, and it's an impulse, and this is what we have the result as. So now let's go back to understanding our sampling theorem. And so with this knowledge, what are the two important concepts we need? This is one concept that we need. That is, the impulse train can be represented in this manner. And the other concept that we would require to understand the sampling theorem is the property of the Fourier transform, that x of t into e to the power of j omega st has a Fourier transform x of omega minus omega s. So multiplying by omega by frequency in the time domain is the translation. So these are two properties that we would require in proving the sampling theorem. This is the Fourier series representation of the impulse train, and this is the frequency translation property of Fourier transform. So now let's continue in our attempt to prove the sampling theorem. So what we have is, we have an analog signal x of t. We have an analog signal x of t. And this signal is let us take the example that I take this analog signal and then I multiply. I multiply by, say, p of t. And what is p of t? I'll take it as an impulse train. Is an impulse train, and what ts, 2ts, 3ts, etc. A periodic signal of strength 1 and time period ts. I'm going to multiply my signal x of t with p of t. What will be the output? It's going to be the sample signal. So this is, say, my input signal. And so when I multiply, I am going to get the sampled output xs of t. And what does the sampling theorem mention? Sampling theorem states that from xs of t, I can get back my original signal x of t. And to understand this, we need to go into the frequency domain. And as I said, a signal is completely represented by either the time domain representation or the frequency domain representation. And we do not have any two different signals having the same Fourier transform. So the signal can be represented either in the time or in the frequency domain. So now let us try to understand the above concept. That is, I'm multiplying an analog continuous time signal by an impulse train in the time domain, and I get the sample signal. We now want to see how is the spectrum of the sample signal. So let's take so what we have is xs of t. The sample signal is nothing but the product of x of t and p of t. And what is p of t? Is periodic signal. It's periodic and with period of ts. So instead of writing my impulse train, I will write it in terms of the Fourier series representation. So that is minus infinity to infinity. We just now derived the Fourier series representation of the impulse train, and we got it as 1 by Ts e to the power of Jn omega st. So this is my sample signal in the time domain. In the time domain. So now suppose I want to, or I will just write it in a convenient manner. Minus infinity to infinity x of t e to the power of Jn omega st. So this is my sample signal in the time domain. Now if I take the Fourier transform of the above, say I take the Fourier transform of above. So then what I have, my left hand side will be my spectrum of the sample signal xs of omega 1 by Ts, and Fourier transform is linear, obeys the linearity property. So minus infinity to infinity, and then we have the Fourier transform of x of t e to the power of Jn omega st. And by frequency translation property, what is the Fourier transform of x of t for Jn omega st? It is the translation. So I have 1 by Ts sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of omega minus n omega s. So that's it. So this is our spectrum of the samples. The Fourier transform of the sample signal. And this is the result we have. And let us see how it looks like for some as an example. So what we have, the result is when I sample the signal, the spectrum is going to become periodic. So I'm going to have x of omega minus omega s, x of omega. So I'm going to have terms like shifted by omega s. So the moment I sample, my spectrum has become periodic. Periodic with period omega s. And of course, it's also got a multiplying factor of 1 by Ts. So let's take an example. For example, let us take a case, say, where my signal x of t. I have some signal x of t, whom I am going to specify in the frequency domain. I'm not giving the slot in the time domain. I am considering a signal in the frequency domain. Let us say minus w to plus w. This is the spectrum in the frequency domain. So I'm taking a signal x of t, which is band limited to w or radians in the frequency domain. So now I sample the signal. So I multiply it by x of t into p of t, and then I get my sample signal xs of t. And what's the spectrum of the sample signal now? Xs of omega. What is xs of omega? If I look at the result, I have 1 by Ts. I have one term as 1 by Ts into x of omega. So that is what I have, minus w to plus w. And let us say this is my omega s. And I have another term. Of course, they get multiplied by Ts. And similarly, minus omega s. How do we get these? Because this is the spectrum of my sampled signal x of omega for n equal to 0. N equal to 1 will become x of omega plus omega s. N equal to 1, x of omega minus omega s, and minus 1 will become plus omega s, minus plus 2 omega s, and so on. And though I have drawn only for minus omega s and plus omega s, going further I will have one more term at 2 omega s, 3 omega s, etc. So the spectrum has become periodic. Now this is the spectrum of the periodic of the sample signal, and we comparing it with with the spectrum of my origin. This is my original spectrum. This is my original signal, the spectrum of my original signal. And this is the spectrum of the sample signal. Now I need to, we can realize that the sample signal spectrum is different, and hence the sample signal is different from the original signal. But now I want to get back. So what I'm trying to do is, instead of sending the complete signal, I'm going to send a sample signal. So I need to get back my original signal from the sample signal. By comparing the spectrum of the sample signal and the original signal, we can immediately conclude that if I just pass my sample signal through a low pass filter, I pass it through a low pass filter, which will pass only one term, the basic component x of omega, I will retrieve my original signal back. So that's the whole beauty of the sampling, and that's all that happens in the sampling theorem. So if I have my signal xs of t, what is my xs of t? My sample signal. How is my sample signal? It is going, it is like this. Say my sample signal, the original signal I had sampled it, and then I take the sample signal and then I pass it through a low pass filter. And what is my output going to be? My recovered signal. So I am going to get back my my original, because when I choose the low pass filter in this manner, I am going to get my original signal back. And what should be the cutoff frequency of this low pass filter? Please remember, if I make this cutoff frequency a little more higher, and if I try to include a part of the spectrum of the shifted one, I'm going to have a distortion. My spectrum output from the filter should be exactly identical to the spectrum of my original signal to get back my message. So if we have to write the cutoff frequency, it has to be, my cutoff frequency should be greater than W, but less than, what is this value? Omega s minus W. So we have the condition that my omega c should be greater than W and should be less than omega s minus W. And then I will get back my original signal. Now let's take, so we have the final result that if I have a signal x of t, and then if I have my sample signal xs of t, I am going to have these samples. And how do I get this sample signal? By just multiplying with an impulse train. And if I pass the sample signal through a low pass filter, and I can get back I can get back my my original signal x of t. Now, why did we have the condition that the sampling frequency should be greater than 2W? Let us take the case of say my sampling frequency omega s equal to 2W. If my sampling frequency omega s is exactly equal to 2W, my spectrum of the sample signal, what is it? We said it's going to have a multiplying factor of 1 by Ts. So I have my original spectrum x of omega. Then I have my original spectrum shifted to plus omega s, and another at 2 omega s minus omega s, and so on. And if I pass it through a low pass filter, I should have the cutoff of omega c. In this case, the cutoff frequency of the low pass filter is exactly should be equal to W. And we know that because if I cannot have a low pass filter that passes exactly up to W, and it discards all frequency components higher than W. If I have such a filter, then I can recover my original signal even in this case. But because it becomes difficult to design a practical filter with a sharp transition, we normally try to, in practical cases, we normally set our sampling frequency omega s to be greater than 2 times W. So this is W. and omega s in this case is equal to 2w, and there is an overlap. And of course, it is possible to recover provided we have a filter which can serve as an ideal filter and passes all frequencies up to w and discards all frequencies greater than w. We can retrieve the signal. And the earlier plot that we had was for a case where omega s is much greater than w. On the other hand, if I take another example, say a case where omega s is less than 2w, then what happens? I have my spectrum of the sample signal, and I'm going to say I have the spectrum of the sample signal, and now they're going to again become periodic with the period of omega s, and say this is omega s. And because there's going to be an overlap in the spectral components, and my effective spectrum, because of the overlap, I try to get the equivalent one, and this is going to be my spectrum of the sample signal. Now we will agree that no matter what filter I have, it is not possible for me under any circumstance to get back my original spectrum from this situation. So what is this situation? When my sampling frequency is less than 2w, and hence we have that for recovery of the signal, I need to have greater than 2w. So this is, so when I have this omega s is greater than 2w, I have the first case that we had seen. What was that case? It is this case. When do we have this figure? We have this situation when omega s is greater than 2w, and so we have enough frequency band, and I can choose any frequency in between, and my design of a low pass filter for recovery is not going to be very stringent, and this becomes a feasible implementation, and I can perform sampling, and I can also retrieve my original signal back from the sample signal. So now in this whole process, what did we make any assumptions? Did we make any assumptions, or what is our understanding till now? So what we said is, if I have a continuous time signal that is band limited to W, I can get a sample signal excess of T, which is going to be sampled at a frequency Fs that is going to be greater than going to be sampled, let's say omega s is greater than 2w, and from this I can get back I can recover my signal by passing it through a low pass filter whose cutoff frequency is omega c, should be greater than w and less than omega s minus w. I can get back my signal. Now, if I look at these, and how did I perform sampling? To perform sampling, I multiply it by an impulse train. Now, can we have an impulse function? Can I have an impulse train? These are questions that arise. And do we have a band limited signal? Yes, we may not have a band limited signal, but we can always limit it in band. We may not have an impulse train, but we definitely have a pulse train. And in the next module, we shall see what is the effect of why do we need to band limit the signal, and how we can avoid, how we can solve the problem in case the signal is not band limited, and what is the spectrum of the sample signal when I use a pulse train instead of an impulse train. But otherwise, we have not done any approximation, any assumption in this whole proof. And as long as I have a band limited signal, and if I choose my sampling frequency accordingly, it is possible for me to get back my original signal from its samples by passing it through a simple low pass filter. And sampling process is also extremely simple. I need to just multiply it by an impulse train. In the next module, we shall see the impact of of using pulses. That is, what happens instead of having an impulse train, I will try to use a pulse train. So I can have short fixed pulses, and I can definitely have this in my lab, and I can generate it, and my practical sampling will always have a pulse of a finite duration. We shall try and see what happens when I perform sampling using this. Can I still recover my signal back? Thank you. And why this whole sampling theorem becomes extremely important is all signals that occur in nature, For example, if I take the temperature of a room, or if I take the height at which an aircraft flies, height of an aircraft, or if I consider the speed of a vehicle is moving and I have the speed of a vehicle, or if we consider my own voice, human voice, my voice, they're all analog. They're all going to be analog in by nature. By nature, all physical signals are in analog. But I want to have the advantage of taking a signal, storing it, processing it, modifying it, and then retrieving it later. For example, I listen to a good music, I record it, store it, and then retrieve it later. All this is possible only when I convert it to a suitable discrete time signal sequence XN. And to convert from the analog to the digital, I need to perform sampling, and sampling using the sampling theorem. And hence, for all signal processing applications, this sampling theorem becomes the key factor in converting from analog to the discrete time domain. So thank you. And for reference, I have referred to two textbooks. One is the book on I hope it was visible, Signals and Systems by Simon Hayekins, published by Wiley. And another book is The Principles of Communication Systems by Top Schilling. These are the two books I have referred in preparing this content. Thank you.